Imagine you're a shipping company, moving a container from India to Europe. For decades, there has been one obvious answer. Put it on a ship, cross the Arabian Sea, pass through the Suez Canal, cross the Mediterranean, and arrive in Europe. Simple. But what if there was another way? A route where cargo could leave India by ship, cross the Arabian Peninsula by rail, and continue into Europe by sea. It's called the India, Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. And if you think this is just another railway project, you're missing the real story. Because IMEC isn't really about trains. It's about who controls the movement of goods, energy, data, and economic influence between some of the world's most important markets. So why is another trade route necessary? For decades, global trade has depended on a handful of maritime choke points. One of the most important is the Suez Canal. Around 12% of global trade has historically passed through it. And we've seen what happens when that route is disrupted. In 2021, the Ever Given blocked the canal for 6 days, disrupting one of the world's most important trade arteries. Then, in late 2023 and into 2024, attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea forced many ships to avoid the Suez route altogether. Instead, vessels traveled around the Cape of Good Hope. Longer journeys, more fuel, higher costs. Suddenly, alternative trade routes didn't seem so theoretical. And that's where IMEC comes in. Announced in 2023 by India, the United States, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Israel, and European partners, the concept is surprisingly simple. India connects to the Middle East by sea. Goods then travel across the Arabian Peninsula by rail. And from the Mediterranean, they continue toward Europe by ship. But the plan goes beyond cargo. It also envisions electricity infrastructure, clean hydrogen pipelines, and digital connectivity. So don't think of IMEC as a railway. Think of it as an infrastructure network connecting ships, railways, ports, energy, and data. And diversification is the key. Companies don't just need the cheapest route. They need routes they can depend on. If one route becomes blocked, dangerous, or politically unstable, having another option suddenly becomes extremely valuable. But there's an even bigger reason countries are interested. Geopolitics. India gets another pathway into European markets. Europe gets another connection to Asian supply chains. The Gulf states can become even more important logistics hubs. And the United States gains a project that strengthens economic connections between partners in a region where China has dramatically expanded its influence. Because IMEC didn't appear in a geopolitical vacuum. China has spent years building infrastructure and trade relationships through the Belt and Road Initiative. Ports, railways, roads, energy projects, trade corridors across Asia, Africa, and Europe. So IMEC can also be viewed as an attempt to build a competing economic network. And the Gulf is at the center of this strategy. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have spent years trying to transform themselves into global logistics, finance, technology, and manufacturing hubs. Their geography is an asset. If goods, energy, data, and investment pass through the region between Asia and Europe, that geography becomes incredibly valuable. But now comes the difficult part. Can IMEC actually work? Building a corridor on a map is easy. Building it in the real world is much harder. Railways have to be built or upgraded. Ports need capacity. Customs systems need to work across borders. Governments need to coordinate. And the entire journey has to be competitive with shipping. Because container ships are incredibly efficient. IMEC doesn't automatically win just because rail can be faster over land. The real question is whether the complete journey becomes faster, cheaper, safer, or more reliable for enough cargo to justify the investment. And then there's politics. The proposed route includes Israel, making the project's future closely tied to an extremely complicated regional environment. The entire concept depends on countries with competing interests, cooperating closely enough to create one functioning economic corridor. That's a huge challenge. But it's also what makes the project so interesting. Because infrastructure can sometimes create something politics struggles to create: shared economic interests. If billions of dollars connect India, the Gulf, Israel, and Europe, Keeping those connections operational becomes valuable to everyone involved. The railway isn't just carrying containers. It's creating interdependence. And then there's the trillion-dollar question. How much will all of this cost? Despite headlines describing IMEC as a trillion-dollar project, there is no confirmed $1 trillion IMEC price tag. The final cost depends on what infrastructure is ultimately built and how much existing infrastructure can be used. So the trillion-dollar figure should be treated as an estimate of the potential scale of the broader network, not a confirmed construction budget. And the exact number may not even be the most important part, because infrastructure creates value long after it's built. If the corridor reduces transportation times, lowers logistics costs, attracts factories, creates logistics hubs, connects energy markets, and moves digital information, its economic value could become much larger than the initial investment. They're not simply buying railway tracks. They're buying economic positioning. So could IMEC actually change global trade? Maybe, but probably not by replacing the Suez Canal. Ships will continue dominating long-distance maritime trade, and the Suez Canal will remain incredibly important. The more realistic future is competition and diversification. A second network giving companies and governments another option. And that's the real power of IMEC. It doesn't have to replace the Suez Canal to matter. It just has to make the world slightly less dependent on it. If it succeeds, India could become more deeply integrated with European supply chains. The Gulf could become an even more important global logistics hub. Europe could gain another connection to Asian markets. And the countries along the route could become strategically indispensable. Because sometimes the most important infrastructure isn't the road you can see. It's the economic relationships created around it. A railway can move a container, but a corridor can move an entire economy. The question isn't whether IMEC can replace the Suez Canal. The real question is whether it can become important enough that the global economy can't afford to ignore it. And if it can, the next great trade route may not be built around one canal. It may be built around an entire network. Expertise dive. One topic. Deep dive. No surface-level answers. What should we dive into next?